You know, I could be a preacher and be active and be serving God. And if I don't discipline myself and bring my body into subjection, I could become disqualified in the misuse of my liberty. I could run my liberty out to where I'm flirting on the thin edge of liberty, and I could fall into temptation and sin and be disqualified from serving Christ. And you know many people in Christian service who have been disqualified. Many. In serving Jesus Christ and using their liberty and abusing their liberty, they render themselves useless and disqualified. So Paul in this passage is saying you can't run your liberty out to all of its extremities without noting the danger of falling into sin yourself. It all boils down to the problem of overconfidence. When a Christian gets to the place where he's so confident of his maturity and so confident of his strength that he thinks he can handle anything, he's really in a very precarious position. Notice verse 12. That's the sum of the first 13 verses. This is the germ of it. This is the heart of it. Verse 12. Wherefore, that means based on the 11 verses just preceding, on this basis, let him that thinks he stand take heed, what? Lest he fall. It's just when you think everything is fine that you're in bad shape. Now, the Bible warns, and I want to back up a little bit from the text, and I want to show you something of what the Bible says about overconfidence. As Christians, you can be mature. I can be mature and strong. But at the same time, I have to be careful what I do with my liberty because I too can be tempted and fall into sin, and such sin as could disqualify me from service, and you as well. The Bible says a lot about this because God is very concerned about it. And over in the Bible, God humbles the proud over and over again. In Proverbs 16:18, pride goes before destruction and a proud spirit before a fall. In fact, in Proverbs 29:23, it says a man's pride shall bring him low. That's paradoxical, but it's true. Let me show you some illustrations of pride and how God dealt with it. Some illustrations of overconfidence. Look at Esther chapter 6. Esther is a fascinating book. Esther was a Jewish lady who was very beautiful. She was living in a Persian kingdom. The Persian king got very upset at his wife because he was drunk one night, King Ahasuerus or Xerxes. He was drunk and he says, "Bring me my wife." And there was a party going on. He says, "I want everybody to see how beautiful she is." So, or something like that. So they sent for his wife. Vashti was her name, and she says, "Nothing doing. I'm not coming in there. He just wants to put me on display." He probably wanted possibly even to disrobe her in front of everybody. And she was right in the sense that she didn't come. So she says, "No, I'm not coming." So the wise men in the land said, "We're in trouble because your wife will not come." And he says, "She is out as queen. She is deposed. If we don't do that, then every woman in this kingdom won't come when her husband wants her. Because everybody does what the queen does." And so they deposed her, and he said, "Now I want to find me a queen." And he found one, Esther. She happened to be Jewish. Well, that became a problem because there were some anti-Semitic people in the country, namely one man named Haman, who decided that he would plot to kill all the Jews. He even built a gallows at his house to use in hanging one particular Jew named Mordecai. And so Haman had this whole plot all worked out, and Esther did become the queen. And the king heard about the plot, and he was going to honor Mordecai the Jew. And in chapter 6, it tells us in verse 4, and the king said, "Who is in the court?" And Haman was come to the outer court of the king's house to speak to the king to hang Mordecai. Here comes Haman. We're going to hang Mordecai. All the time the king's thinking of honoring Mordecai, see? But Haman wants to get rid of him. And the king's servant said to him, "Behold, Haman stands in the court." And the king said, "Tell him to come in." And Haman came in, and the king said to him, "What shall be done for the man whom the king delights to honor?" Haman, help me out. I got a problem. I want to honor this man, and I'd like to know, what do you think we should do to really just give this guy the red carpet? Now, Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to do honor more than to myself? It must be me. He has in mind. And man, he really laid it on. Get him the royal apparel, the whole bit. See, he thought it was going to be him. The noble princes, and parade him through town on horseback and proclaim him. Boy, just really laid it on. Got all done, said, wonderful, that's what I'll do with Mordecai. Well, to make a long story short, what happened in the end when the king heard about the plot is recorded in chapter 7, verse 10. Haman was going to kill Mordecai and Esther and everybody else who was Jewish, so they hanged Haman on his own gallows. That's the danger of overconfidence. In Daniel chapter 4, another illustration that's very graphic is an illustration of the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar felt himself to be invincible. It says, verse 28, all this came upon the king Nebuchadnezzar. Here it comes. At the end of 12 months, he walked in the palace of the kingdom of Babylon. He's walking in the palace. The king spoke and said, is not this great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty? Look what I've done. It's incredible how mighty I am. While the word was in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken, the kingdom is departed from thee. You're a little overconfident. That's the end. And they shall drive thee from men, and they did, the Medes and the Persians. And thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make thee eat grass like an oxen. 7 times shall pass over thee, until thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. And the same hour was the thing fulfilled on Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from men, did eat grass like oxen. His body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hairs were grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails like bird's claws. Became a raving maniac, sleeping in the grass and eating it like an animal. Proud. Obadiah. Don't try to find it. Just listen. I'll read it to you. Obadiah is a prophecy against Edom. Edom was a southern area, east and south of the nation of Israel, across the Dead Sea and to the south extent. And the great city in Edom was the city of Petra. Petra was a city that was carved out of the cliffs in a canyon, and you can ride in there. I've been there a couple of times on horseback. You can ride right into Petra. It's a fantastic experience. There's an area there where only one person can pass, and so it's fortified incredibly. Just a single man, for all intents and purposes, can block the entrance, and there is no other way in. And so Edom was very self-confident that they were invincible. In verse 3, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock. They all live in the caves. They lived in the caves carved out of the rocks. And they were so proud that they were invincible. In their heart they said, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself like the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, from there will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. And he